Hello everyone, I'm your hostess with the mostest 8-second gaming, and in today's video we are going to be breaking down the Season 21 weapon tier list. We are actually in a pretty balanced weapon state right now. Everything seems viable, but there are still some weapons that are better than others, so let's break this all down. But just quickly, if you guys are looking to take your Apex skill to the next level, then you have to check out the GameLeap website right now. Over there, we have top level coaches creating the best, most highly informative guides to make you the best player you can possibly be. We have legend guides, gun guides, VOD reviews, and much more, so no matter what you struggle with or want to improve, we have solutions for you. So click the link in the description, pick yourself up a membership, and start to improve today. But okay, with that done, let's move into things, and I do want to cover one thing very quickly. Care package weapons will not be on this tier list. All of the care package weapons are very strong, so they would be in S tier or S plus tier, so there's no point in really having them on this list. This is just going to be the ground loot weapons. But with that covered, let's move into the first tier, and that is going to be the E tier, and there's only one weapon finding themselves down here, and it is the P2020. Now, I am a very big fan of the P2020. People that play with me all the time know that I love a P2020 with hammer points. But it is not a good weapon. It is a meme weapon and can pop off if you have a trigger finger, but most of the time you are going to be getting out damaged by pretty much every single gun in the game. Plus it really falls off at range because you can't really have any decent sights on it, and it's just not useful in like 99% of situations. All it is good for is holding a light mag until you find a better weapon. But with that covered, let's move into the next tier, which is the D tier, and there are three weapons here. We've got the Spitfire, the Rampage, and the RE45. Now with the Spitfire and the Rampage, they can be very brutal in some very niche situations. They have a lot of ammo, they can be sending downfield, they can cover you very well, but they're not really strong in the current meta. LMGs are not that good. They're bulky, they slow you down, they put you in a lot of vulnerable positions, and the time to kill just isn't there compared to a lot of the other weapons right now. And I have to be honest, I like the fact that LMGs are not in a good spot because I've played the game since it came out and I've seen when LMGs are meta and how awful it is, so I'm really happy that we have two of them in the D tier. But the last weapon in the D tier is the RE45, and again, with hammer points, this can do some decent damage. But it falls off incredibly hard if somebody is not almost right next to you, and if somebody has a lot of shields, like if they're on purple or red, the time it takes to crack them before the hammer points really kick in is just way too long. You are going to lose a lot of gunfights if the other person has any form of aim, so the RE45 is just not that strong of a weapon, and that is why it's in D tier. Next up though, we have the C tier, and there are two weapons here. We've got the L-Star and the Triple Take. Now the L-Star does fit into the same issues that the other LMGs have, but it has one benefit, and that is that it doesn't have to reload. The L-Star can do some nasty damage in fights if you are able to space out your shootings, because then you don't have to reload at all and you have so much uptime damage potential. It also does have a fairly sneaky fast time to kill, so if you're hitting a decent amount of shots and you're able to pace yourself, you can wipe a full squad fairly easily. But it does have the same drawbacks that the other LMGs have, and it also doesn't feel good at range right now. You almost have to use the L-Star as a pseudo SMG, but at that point you're probably being beat by an actual SMG or even just an assault rifle. So the L-Star does have some spots where it can be good, but still does have its drawbacks, and that's why I'm putting it in the C tier. And the next one we have here is another energy weapon, that's the Triple Take, and that's because it just doesn't feel as strong as the other marksman rifles. Marksman rifles right now are not in the best of spots because they have been getting hit with a ton of nerfs, especially after the 30-30 meta that we saw a couple seasons ago. And the Triple Take wasn't the best to begin with, and then all the marksman rifles just don't feel good right now. So the Triple Take just kind of feels lost and forgotten. Now it does have some potential because if you're hitting a fully choked up headshot, it can hit like a truck, and that's why I'm putting it in C tier, not anything lower. But the pacing feels awkward, the damage feels awkward, it just feels like a completely janky gun to use right now. So C tier is where I am slamming this bad boy. But next up we can move into the B tier, and find themselves here are 6 weapons. We have the 30-30, the G7, the Alternator, the Charge Rifle, the Longbow, and the Sentinel. Now like I mentioned just a few seconds ago, marksman rifles are not in the best spot right now with all of the nerfs that they have received. Also, the meta is not really heavily favored towards marksman rifles because fights are extremely extremely AP. If people notice that you're using a marksman rifle or a sniper rifle, they're just gonna run straight at you because then you don't have a second weapon in a close range situation. That is a very limiting factor, and with fights not being as poke heavy, the G7 and the 3030 just don't have the same spot in the meta that they used to. Now they still do decent damage, and the G7 actually has a pretty fast fire rate and can down somebody incredibly quickly, so that is why I think they are a B tier weapon, because they're kind of middle of the pack right now. They can put in some work, but for the most part they're not going to be super standout-ish. But until we see some changes in the meta to kind of slow it down a little bit, I don't think that I can put these guys any higher. Now next up we have the alternator, and the alternator is a very reliable weapon. You can use this if you're brand new to the game and be perfectly fine with it because it has very easy to control recoil and decent damage output. But the damage output is not fast enough for me to be able to put this any higher, even with disruptor rounds. If you get into a straight up gunfight with the alternator and somebody has a different SMG or an assault rifle, you are losing that fight 10 times out of 10 if they have any aim. If the alternator gets a little bit of a boost in its time to kill, then the alternator could definitely move into A tier, or dare I say even S tier with disruptor rounds, but the time to kill right now is its biggest limiting factor and why I think it is a B tier weapon. And then coming up the rear in B tier are all of the 3 sniper rifles, the charge rifle, the longbow, and the sentinel. And like I mentioned with the marksman rifles, it's not really a meta for sniper rifles or long range poke weapons right now. Now these do have some upsides. The charge rifle is really good at griefing teams from a distance, the sentinel when it's charged up hits like a truck, and the longbow has a really fast fire rate. But again, with all of the fights being super AP and people wanting to just run at you, you're not going to find spots to use these guns most of the time. Now if you're playing like a support legend or you're backline anchoring for your team, you can use a sniper rifle or a marksman rifle and be perfectly fine because you have the opportunities to poke at teams. But right now the meta is kind of holding these weapons back, and why I think the sniper rifles are on the same tier as the marksman rifles, and why I think that they are all B tier. But with that covered, we can move into the A tier, and there are 7 weapon find themselves here. We've got the Car, the R99, the Volt, the Prowler, the Mastiff, the PK, and the Mozambique. Now I think you guys can spot kind of the pattern that is here. These are all of just the up close weapons. The SMGs are in a very solid spot in terms of their usefulness because they all have gives and takes, but they're all very strong in the spots where they are meant to be strong in. The Car and the R99 are kind of interchangeable. They're just really good spray weapons. The Volt does lose a little bit of kill potential when it is up close and personal, but it's a very stable weapon they can use at ranges where SMGs typically aren't as good. And the Prowler is just meant to shred people with its bursts up close and personal, and it does that extremely well. Now any of these I could definitely see an argument to put them into S tier, but in my opinion the meta that we're in right now isn't as heavily favored towards the SMGs as it has been in the past. All of them are viable, but you don't have to be running one of these in order to actually succeed in the game. That is the reason why I'm putting them in A tier and not S tier, because if you don't have to run one of these in order to actually win a fight, then I don't think that they're S tier material. And the shotguns are another perfect example of that, because we have 3 of the shotguns in this tier as well. Like I have mentioned before, the fights are just super AP where people are running at you, and shotguns are great bonk sticks to tell people, no, don't run at me, I have just a really strong weapon in close quarters. So if they don't think things out, they're going to be absolutely put down and sent back to the lobby thanks to your shotgun. And typically the Mastiff or the PK, there is one that is better than the other in the meta, but right now I think they are both fairly balanced and they are interchangeable. The PK hits a little bit harder, especially with disruptor rounds, but it is not as consistent with its damage. The Mastiff doesn't hit nearly as hard, but it is more consistent. And some people might not be fans of the Mozambique, but the Mozambique is an incredibly consistent weapon, and especially with hammer points, you can be putting in a ton of work that a lot of people don't actually understand. When you're hitting shields, you're hitting for 45 damage consistently. A couple of shots of those and you're already breaking armor, and then you could just 101 somebody with the hammer points and down them instantly. The Mozambique does scary amounts of damage with hammer points, and I think a lot of people really need to understand and respect it in those situations. But again, I like the shotguns, but I don't think that you have to run a shotgun in order to actually win the game, so that is why they're A tier and not S tier. But speaking of S tier, what is in there? Well, we have 6 weapons here. We have the Wingman, the Flatline, the Havoc, the Hemlock, the Nemesis, and the R301. Right now, we are in an assault rifle meta. The assault rifles are king. It doesn't matter what range you are in, the assault rifles are going to outshine almost every weapon out there. All of them feel just absolutely insane right now, and I was thinking that assault rifles were going to be heavily nerfed going into the season, but they weren't, and they just feel ridiculously strong. The Hemlock, the Nemesis, burst assault rifles that can just chew through armor insanely quickly, opening up a lot of opportunities for your team. The R301, an incredibly versatile and stable assault rifle that you can use in almost any situation. The flyline hits like a truck, but does have a little bit of a recoil problem, but you can still use it in close ranges because of its amazing hip fire. And the Havoc is just an absolute laser beam right now. It doesn't matter if you have the turbocharger or not, this thing is just going to be shredding people left, right, and center. And honestly, if I had an S+ tier, I'd probably put this up there because it's just such a strong weapon right now. It was really strong last season as well, so I was really actually hoping that Respawn would kind of do something about this, but we haven't seen any changes to it yet, so it's still just the best assault rifle that's out there, and if you can get your hands on this in game, run it. If your team is running 2 to 3 Havocs on it, you can down somebody incredibly fast if you're team firing them. They're not going to have any time to react to it. And if you can get 1 to 2 turbocharges on these bad boys, oh my lord, the damage and destruction that you're going to be able to rain out is nutty. And of course, I can't forget to talk about the Wingman, because the Wingman is out of the care package, it's back on ground loot, and is just as good as it's ever been. The Wingman is a very solid staple pick in Apex for a reason. It's a high risk, high reward weapon. If you're hitting those headshots on somebody, you're going to win that fight probably, because it's just so much damage in such a short period of time. And even though it can't take a mag anymore, if you find a boosted loader, you don't really need the mag because you're having 8 bullets anyway and a faster reload. And on top of that, the Wingman is a pistol, so you have the pistol strafe speed when you're aiming down sights, and you're just a little bit more elusive in your strafing. The Wingman has just always been one of the best weapons in Apex for a reason, and now that's back on ground loot, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it going into S tier. But let me know any of these weapons you would change in the comments down below, and if you guys want to stay up to date with the latest, greatest Apex Legends tips, tricks, and news, don't forget to smash the like and subscribe button. Thank you all for watching. Once again, I'm 8 Second Gaming. I'll see you guys in the next one.